evening. I'm Linda Engel, and thank you for joining us on UTA at Night. In this edition, we have with us Jim Mars. He's the instructor for a continuing education course titled The Assassination of John F. Kennedy. Thank you for being here today, Jim.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay. Would you kind of brief us on the course that you teach here at UTA and just give us a little bit of background on it?
Sure. It's kind of interesting. This is not your usual continuing education type course, but I was asked by the university if I would teach this course back about 1976. And since then, it has been kind of an ongoing course. I offer it in the fall and in the spring. The most interesting thing I think about the course is the change of attitudes and perceptions on the part of the people who have taken the course.
Has this attitude changed in the past few years, or a dramatic change in the past few years, or how many years has a change been coming?
I would say the change really started about 1979 when the Congressional House Committee on Assassinations came out with their conclusions, which of course were that there was probably a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy and that at least 2 gunmen were involved.
So it's not believed that just Oswald did it all by himself?
It was until about that time. Starting in the early courses in 76, 77, 78, one of the first questions I would ask the class before we got into any of the material is raise your hand if you believe that Lee Harvey Oswald alone was responsible for the death of John F. Kennedy, and almost unanimously everybody would raise their hand. Even at that time, though, by the time we finished the course, and I had presented all the material that I had to present, and we had talked over all the various aspects of the Kennedy assassination, no one would raise their hand on that question, which showed me that, you know,
obviously,
I must be doing something right, or they were seeing something.
A big change had taken place.
Right. Now, after the House Assassinations Committee made their report, and with the publication of some books in recent years, notably Tony Summers' book Conspiracy, Blakey's book The Plot to Kill the President, and of course David Lifton's much publicized book Best Evidence. Now I find that in recent years the numbers tend to starts turning around 180 degrees. And to the point to where last fall, when I asked that question at the very beginning of the course, not one person raised their hand, and it quite honestly kind of surprised me.
How do you think that these people came about their information? You know, determining that it wasn't just Oswald by himself, because we don't hear just a whole lot about it. You know.
That's true. The media does not tends to treat the assassination as a historical event, and as such pays little or no attention to it. I think the people that I've found who come to my class are highly motivated on their own. They read something or they see something somewhere that really piques their interest. And when they find out that I'm offering a course on the thing to where they can see a lot of information that they have not had access to, then that prompts their attention. One of the proof of this, I suppose, is that very often in the course, which is supposed to be normally over at 9 o'clock, we'll be showing some videotapes or slides, or there'll be a big discussion going on, and sometimes it'll run till 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Wow.
And with few exceptions, nobody leaves. So they're obviously very, very interested in the course.
Now that sets you back a little bit, gets you home kind of late.
Yeah, especially since I have such a long way to go.
Yeah. So what we're saying is initially people believe that it was Oswald, and what is your theory on this? Do you?
Well, Linda, I try not to deal with theories. All right. In fact, one of the first things I tell my classes is, don't believe a word I say. Don't believe anything I say. Just listen to me. Check out my information, see if you don't come to the same conclusions and draw the same conclusions from the same evidence that I see. The problem, Linda, is that it's not what the people believe, it's what they've been told. There has been so much misinformation about the Kennedy assassination that the vast bulk of the people are totally confused about it. And as is a natural human trait, if you become confused, then you tend to tune out.
Yes.
You say, oh, I don't want to hear any more about that, and I just don't want to talk about it. A lot of people I've heard say that people are apathetic, that they're apathetic about the assassination, they're apathetic about what goes on in this country. Maybe I'm an idealist, but I don't buy that. I don't think that people are truly apathetic as to what happened to our highest elected official. I feel like they are confused. There's charge and countercharge, claim and counterclaim. I try to stay away from theories until all of the evidence is presented, and then we put all the evidence into a framework that makes sense in light of all of this best evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, what comes out of that framework is very much different than what the government has officially said for 17 years, and hence what is popularly believed.
So these people, just the general public, are confused because maybe what they have seen on television or read in papers hasn't necessarily been the whole part of the whole portion of the story, or all of it, or is it kind of altered a little bit to maybe look pleasing to one portion of the public or something?
It's a little bit of all of that. It's misinformation, it's lack of information, it's, for instance, of course, the Warren Commission, which was chaired by then Chief Justice Earl Warren. They met behind closed doors, heard secret testimony, and finally came out and said, okay, based on all the evidence that we have seen, we conclude that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole assassin of President Kennedy. Well, now most people know that. What most people do not know is that for that particular theory to hold up, which researchers call the lone assassin theory, you have to believe that a ex-Marine with, by all evidence, a very poor shot, was able to take a $3 Italian rifle, which the Italians had dubbed the humane weapon because it wouldn't hit anything, that the FBI in their records showed they had to put 3 metal shims under the telescopic sight to make it line up with the barrel of that gun, and this was after the assassination, so it couldn't possibly have worked correctly. And we're expected to believe that this man, using this totally inaccurate and bad weapon, managed to squeeze off 3 shots in the space of 6 seconds, which was just barely within the time frame that expert riflemen using quality bolt-action rifles could work the bolt, much less try to hit anybody with. But we were expected to believe that this person fired off 3 shots in the space of 6 seconds, hit 2 out of 3 of these shots at a target moving away from him at a downward angle, and that one of the shots, one bullet, coursed through 2 men, striking 3 big bones, making 9 separate wounds, and emerged intact, pristine, and was found on a stretcher at Parkland Hospital.
So one bullet supposedly did all that,
according to the Warren Commission.
Okay.
Linda, another thing I find that's very interesting is that the older the person, the people my age group or older, are more inclined to still think that there's nothing to look at the John F. Kennedy assassination, that everything that could be said about it has been said. It's the younger people who seem to have a greater interest, and I suspect because it's the younger people who were either not alive at that time or who were too young to really understand and accept the massive amount of conditioning that went on as to what happened through the media.
Yeah.
They are able to look back and see the discrepancies and see the absurdity of some of the statements that were made, and they can see what in effect was a cover-up much plainer than the people who lived through it and who had blinded acceptance of government pronouncements and official
because they were so led to believe that it was one person that had done it. But I guess people my age, I am 22, so I was born the year of the President was shot.
You
And
were born in 63.
I was born in 63, so I have never really heard a whole lot about it. Me or my friends, people of my age, we hear that it went on, but just not a whole lot of, publicity about it. We just kind of accept it as a matter of fact.
That's true, and I would think that that's probably because of two main reasons. One is, again, the news media, which tends to have tunnel vision. If it doesn't happen today, it just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
We're not interested in it. They tend to treat historical events, major events, as isolated events. For instance, during the Watergate trial, the Watergate story went on for more than 2 years before everybody finally got the idea that there's something going on. It was a little story here, and next week would be another little story, and next week would be another little story. And I venture to say that even today, with as much as been written on Watergate and the Watergate experience, that the vast majority of Americans still do not really clearly understand what Watergate was all about. And it's the same thing with the John F. Kennedy assassination. The second thing would be that aside from the news media not just telling them about what went on, excuse me, you have a reluctance on the part of people in government to try to drag that up. This is nothing sinister. This is not like some great cover-up. It's just the same type thing that if you have some crazy old uncle, you just try to act like he's not there, and you just don't want to talk about it.
Unsaid, or just leave things over there.
Just leave things as they are, and let's go on. And that leads a question that I'm asked on many different occasions, which is, why bother? Why study the John F. Kennedy assassination? Nothing's going to bring the guy back, and what difference does it make?
Mm-hmm. But it'd be of more interest to like why the people shot him or who it was that was involved.
Exactly. The key to the John F. Kennedy assassination is not who shot John F. Kennedy, because anybody, including the famous lone nut or a group thereof, or agents of the CIA, the KGB, the whatever, anybody could have shot John F. Kennedy. The key to the Kennedy assassination is what happened in the aftermath, what happened after John F. Kennedy was shot. And what happened was a well-documented now and a very definite pattern of destruction of evidence, suppression of evidence, intimidation of witnesses, all of which, if it was conducted by an individual, myself for instance, or you, Linda, in the course of a criminal investigation, would mean jailable offense. But these things were conducted in the wake of the John F. Kennedy assassination by federal authorities. And keep in mind that it started about the time that they were announcing that Kennedy was dead.
Mm-hmm.
The federal authorities, FBI, Secret Service, whisked his body away from Dallas illegally. At that moment, it was a Texas homicide and should have been investigated as a Texas homicide. And any homicide, the law states that the body is not to be moved until the medical examiner has an opportunity to determine the exact cause of death and rule on whether it's a homicide, a suicide, whatever.
So things at this point are starting to look a little bit suspicious, maybe, for higher level people.
Absolutely.
So they took the body from Texas to Washington?
Right, and as if David Lifton has very well documented in his book, and as we have known for years and years, the wounds as described by all of the Dallas medical personnel, doctors, nurses, orderlies, and including some of the Secret Service agents and all like that, is totally contrary to the wounds as described by the inexperienced naval doctors who were asked to perform a directed autopsy at Bethesda Naval Hospital the evening of November the 22nd. Well, now this leads basically to three conclusions. The Dallas medical authorities were lying, and the Bethesda doctors were telling the truth. That doesn't make any sense. What possible reason would all these people in Dallas have for lying? Second possibility is that the Dallas authorities are telling the truth, and the Bethesda naval doctors are lying about what they saw. But that doesn't seem to make any sense either. Why would they lie? And how could they get away with something like that anyway, since there are autopsy reports supposedly photographs, which have never been made available to the public, however. But that doesn't make much sense. But then there is the third possibility, which is that both sets of authorities were telling the truth as they saw it. And this seems to be the more likely of the prospects. But what this means is that Kennedy's body, the President of the United States, who was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, his body was operated on and the wounds were altered from the time it left Dallas to the time that it was autopsied at Bethesda. Again, who has the power to do that? Could Lee Harvey Oswald have done that? Could Castro have done that? Could low-level KGB agents do that? Hardly.
No, just the people that were on a flight with them. It would have had to be done on the flight over, wouldn't it? If that's when something was done, if something was done at all.
Conceivably. David Lifton, in his book, Best Evidence, however, points out that apparently there was 2 coffins and 2 ambulances, and that his theory, and this is theory, although it's based on some pretty good facts, was that Kennedy's body was actually whisked off of Air Force One when it landed in Washington, sent ahead and arrived either at Walter Reed Hospital or Bethesda a good 45 minutes before the Dallas coffin and Jackie Kennedy and others arrived, so that there was time there to alter the body. One of the cases of this was an interview he did with one of the X-ray technicians at Bethesda, who had already X-rayed Kennedy's body, had the X-rays tucked under his arm, and was walking down a hallway of Bethesda Naval Hospital when Jackie Kennedy and the Dallas coffin and the entourage arrived at the front door and were coming in.
So they had an empty coffin?
They had an empty coffin.
Wow.
Again, this points to who was really behind the assassination.
So,
it also goes a long way to explain why this information is not just made readily available to the public. In fact, if I might, I would tell you what Jack Ruby himself said.
Okay.
In one of his last court appearances, and this is on sound and film at a Fort Worth television station right now, and has been included in several documentaries, Jack Ruby, and I'm paraphrasing him, but essentially he said, the exact truth of what has happened here will never become above ground in our lifetime, because there are people in high positions of authority who will see to it that it's not made public. And the interviewer says, Jack, you mean within the government? And he said, yes.
So then Ruby...
So Ruby himself tried to tell people what was
going on. Okay. Right. Golly. So it leads us to believe then, all the higher level, some of the higher level, people in the government were involved in the assassination.
That seems to be a reasonable conclusion based on all of the available evidence. And again, this track record of suppression of evidence, destruction of evidence, and it can be demonstrated that evidence was destroyed or mutilated while in the hands of the federal government. It can be demonstrated, and in fact has been proved in court cases, that people were intimidated. The FBI would come and question a witness from Dealey Plaza, and when they'd start to try to tell them about extraneous gunmen or extraneous gunfire, they would be told, if you didn't see Lee Harvey Oswald firing from the 6th floor of the school book depository, you didn't see anything. Well, now that's...
So then those people, no doubt, were involved in it too, just the officers that, maybe?
No, not necessarily.
No.
The people, there was a lot of reasons to try to cover up various aspects of the assassination. And when you start talking at the federal level and you've got agents working in Dallas interviewing or doing something, they're simply carrying out their orders. Do you understand what I'm getting at? People on the lower level had no reason to believe that anything had gone on, and had no reason to believe that what they were doing was not what their superiors wanted done for whatever purposes. There is now an abundance of information that is available, and a couple of things I'll touch on is some of the newest evidence that's come up. For instance, if there was a conspiracy and if there were all these gunmen and all like that, or why haven't they come forward? This is a question I'm asked quite often, and it's a good question. They have. There is a man sitting in a Texas jail right now serving a life sentence for a murder-for-hire plot. He is a paid assassin, Charles Harrelson, who was convicted of killing the federal judge John Wood in San Antonio. In open court testimony, it was stated that he told the Changras to hire him because he had participated in the John Kennedy assassination. When he was arrested, he told arresting officers that he had participated in the John F. Kennedy assassination. And what do we now have? We have pictures of 3 men arrested in Dealey Plaza, arrested in the train yards right behind the grassy knoll, moments after the shooting, and one of them appears to be Charles Harrelson. The photo analysis is exact. Ears match, forehead and chin matches, mouth, nose, it all matches. And it matches with what he said. So here's one that's come forward.
But yet we don't see the government taking any action on that?
You don't see any evidence of the government taking action, and what is even more disconcerting to me is you do not even see your local news media picking up on this and running with this story. Another new piece of evidence we have, and probably one of the hottest items to come up in recent years, is the reanalysis of a photograph taken by a woman named Mary Mormon. This photograph was published in the Warren Commission report and was taken at the exact moment of the fatal headshot to John F. Kennedy. Mary Mormon was standing on the south side of Elm Street and was aiming her camera right up onto the infamous grassy knoll. For years and years, people had looked in the wrong place for gunmen and had found tantalizing hints that maybe somebody was there, maybe they weren't. The photographs of the Mormon picture that was circulated around the world had been retouched up along the area of the wall and up along the grassy knoll so that you really couldn't tell what was up there. But based on some information that came up just a few years ago, photo analysis has now been done on the Mormon photograph, concentrating on a different area behind the stockade fence. And lo and behold, when you blow this area up, here's a man in a classic rifle firing position with even a flash where the muzzle of the gun would be. The man's wearing glasses, big, wide, small rim glasses that are very similar to what they call shooter's glasses. You can see his hairline, you can see his ears, you can see his shoulders. What's really interesting is that he is wearing some sort of dark shirt. There is a bright, shiny object on his left chest, and on the shoulder of his left arm is kind of a semicircular patch. This matches up, Linda, very, very closely with the Dallas police uniform. And in fact, there are people now who have been on the knoll who now said that there were 2 Dallas policemen up there at the time of the shooting, something that's never been said before. And of course, no Dallas police, to the best of anybody's knowledge, were ever up there.
So these 2 people that were up there were obviously posing to be Dallas policemen, to get work, to be able to be in that area. Would that be
apparently so?
A reason?
Apparently so. That's a reasonable assumption, since we now have a photograph that seems to show a man in a police uniform, and we now have witnesses and spectators who said that there was 2 Dallas policemen up there. And when the Dallas police and all the official documents show no such people in that position. There's also this interesting thing, and this has been known for a good number of years. Again, it's never really been made public to anybody. There were numerous people in Dealey Plaza, including Dallas police, who encountered men in suits and overcoats who said, Secret Service, we're Secret Service, don't come back here, go over there, you can't come back here, Secret Service, and showed Secret Service identification. The Secret Service then, until this day, maintains they had no agents on foot in Dealey Plaza. Well, who were these men with Secret Service identification? Mary Mormon, by the way, was one of those who encountered a Secret Service agent. She originally intended to go up on the knoll and shoot pictures from up there, but she said in her Warren Commission testimony, which was in the 26 volumes of testimony, but never reported in their report, she said she encountered a man in a trench coat who showed her Secret Service identification and said, you can't come back here. And she said, all right, and went off and went to a different location.
So we could either assume that was a Secret Service man, not on the up and up, or someone just posing to be a Secret Service man.
Since the Secret Service then and now maintained that they didn't have anybody there, I think it's a safe assumption to say that this was somebody posing as a Secret Service man. Well, who's posing as a Secret Service man? And who has the ability to get Secret Service identification that's apparently good enough looking to pass inspection by a Dallas policeman.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on and on. There are photographs of what Chief Curry described as a FBI agent who picked up a bullet on the south side of Elm Street, kept it in his hand, put it in his pocket, and walked off with it. And that was the last that was ever referred to. Well, there's suppression of evidence right there. What was this bullet, and why? What happened to it, and why did a Dallas deputy sheriff and a Dallas policeman stand there and let this plainclothes man pick it up and walk off with it if he didn't have some pretty good credentials?
So it seems like there's a lot of evidence. So do you bring this, like all these pictures and stuff to your class and show your students? You've got slides and all that you bring?
This is another thing that we try to do. I try not to just sit there and try to tell them everything, because then it's a question of, do they want to believe me or do they not want to believe me? What we try to do is show these tapes, show these films that are available, show this analysis of photos that's available, show slides that are analysis of photographs taken in Dealey Plaza, and let the people decide for themselves.
I guess that is the best way to do it, instead of just
the only way.
being told something and this is the way it is, because obviously that goes back when we were told it was Oswald that did it, so everyone said, okay, yeah, that's what happened.
Well, Linda, this is like what I was saying a while ago, and I would say this to your audience out here. Keep in mind that in 1963, Dallas, Texas, that was just an entirely different time and place. We had not had the experience of Vietnam. We had not had the experience of Watergate. No one held the slightest thought that anybody in our government would lie to us. If J. Edgar Hoover said something was so, then that's just the way it was. And don't get me wrong either, I'm not blaming the news media of that time. They were pretty much caught up in the drama of the situation. They were, most of them, encamped at the Dallas police station waiting for the next official pronouncement and handout of information. Excruciatingly few reporters took the initiative to go out and try to find out information on their own. And this was one reason why that the information on the assassination was so directed.
Sounds like there's so much to think about.
There is. There's enough for 3 courses.
Yeah. I think that'd be really interesting, to take your class. Now, you have this in the fall and in the spring, correct?
Fall and in the spring through the Office of Continuing Education.
Okay.
And anyone that's interested in taking the course can simply contact the Office of Continuing Education, University of Texas at Arlington, and they will be apprised of the time and the place and et cetera.
Well, it sounds like a very good course, and maybe one day I will get to come in and sit in. And I want to thank you for joining us this evening. This is Linda Engel on UTA at Night, and we thank you for joining us. On this edition, we talked to James Mars about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And if you're interested in taking the course, contact the Continuing Education Office here at UTA. Thank you.